Hi guys, in this video we're going to be making a cake from the Onward film. So I went to see this film the other week and I really enjoyed it, even brought me to tears in some parts. So I really wanted to have a go at making this. Also, it's part of a collaboration that I did with some other awesome YouTubers, and I'll put on the screen everyone else that's done a project from this same film as well. I'll add links to everybody's videos in the description box, and I'll also put it up again at the end of the video. So definitely check those out. So I started mine with a cake board. I went for a rectangular cake drum and I just printed the picture to match the size of my cake drum. So if you've got a smaller board, go for a smaller picture. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cover it in sheets of cake. So just make sure your sheets of cake are the same size as your board, or at least the bottom one is. And then the rest of the sheets of cake, I'm using offcuts that I had left over from other cakes. And I've cut around my template, cutting out the background. So on the second layer, I'm cutting around the cake, and then any bits where my cake is kind of dipped in, I'm going to fill that back in with other bits of cake. I'm going to cut a bit more off my template, and then my third layer of cake, which is now a different flavour cake. Again, I'm going to cut to fit around that bit of template. So I've got 3 layers of cake there. Now I'm actually using just leftover bits of cake that I've used from other cakes. That's why they're different flavours, but I didn't have time to bake anything, especially for the video. So with the template, I'm going to keep holding it on top of this, and I'm going to mark all the sort of lines, outlines and edges, so around the face, around the arm, and then I'm going to start cutting bits out of my cake. So I'm sloping the knife to try and get angles so that some bits will be set further back and some bits will be nice and prominent. So like his nose and face wants to stick out quite a bit, the forearm. And I'm going to do the same now with like the second layer of cake, so the middle layer of cake. Again, using the template, you might have to cut bits out off the template. So like the mouth, so I can mark around that. You might also find the cake is quite soft and crumbly because we've cut it quite thin in parts. So I'm going to cover it in chocolate ganache. Now, as you can see, some bits were a little bit soft with the ganache, so I didn't get a very good coverage, but it's enough. It will do the job, I think, for this. And then any bits which weren't quite raised enough, I've added some modelling chocolate to, so the nose and little bits of the hair. And then first of all, I'm going to start by covering the background in like a deep blue fondant. I'm going to cut anything off that comes beyond the edge of my board. And then I'm just going to cut it off where sort of the bottom layer starts to meet the second layer. And let's just add a bit of colour to this before we start adding any more fondant. So I'm just using a pink edible dust. And we're going to dust this on the background so it's not just a plain blue. And you can use your template as guidance for where you need to put the colour. I'm also going to add a little bit of white just to lighten it up a bit. And then we want some stars in the sky. Now you can either use a white edible pen. So this works well for tiny little stars, but it's not overly bright. The other option is to use some edible paint and flick it on with a brush. And then I'll use a brush to dot on any bigger stars that I want on there. So now I'm using a pale blue fondant. So I'm using pre-dyed fondant because it was a little bit quicker for me than mixing the colours myself. But you can, of course, just mix the colours into white fondant. So I'm pressing around all the edges where I want a bit more definition, using a little rubber-ended modelling tool to create sort of the creases in the edge of the mouth and also the nostrils. I'm also going to use that to push in around the eyes. And again, use your template so you can cut out the eyes on the template and push it against the face so you can mark where those eyes need to go. And what I'll do is any tools that I've used in the video, I will link in the description box below the video so you know where you can get hold of them. And let's highlight any areas that want to be a little bit lighter. So I'm using the white edible dust. And then I'm also putting a bit of pink on the cheeks. Now I'm going over the darker areas. So the bits that I want to be more shaded, I'm going over with a dark blue. So I'm using my colour palette for this. You can use the loose dusts as well, that's fine. And I've rolled a big teardrop and we've kind of flattened it. And we're going to use this for the ears, so I'll cut a tiny bit off the edge so it sits against the face. And I'll do the same for the other ear. Again, remember, keep looking at your template, checking that it fits size-wise. We're darkening the ears nearer sort of the inner ear and lightening them a bit on the outside edge. Now, I'm just adding a small piece of blue. So the dark blue just behind the ear, and I've put some lines in it so it looks like the back of his hair. Pressing the ear in place. And then we're going to put some more hair just in front of that ear. So again, it's just a dark blue fondant, pushing in the lines with a Dresden tool. We'll do the same over the other ear. And I'm going to use the same blue. So again, it's just a dark blue. We've rolled the strip and I'm just pushing in a texture mat to get a wool-like effect. So just a strip, and then we're going to cut this strip into smaller pieces, which we're going to stick across this first piece that we've rolled out. And this is going to be his woolly hat. So I'm just going to fold this now around the top of his head, and I pinch bits off the edges if I need to. And then we're going to add some more pieces of blue. So I've just got the same colour blue, but it will look different when we've added some food colour into it. Putting plenty of lines in it, just sticking out from under the hat. And then we're going to add some eyebrows. Again, it's the same blue, keeping them nice and thin and pointy on the outside edge, thick in the middle. More hair. So start with a guess at the shape of the piece, and you can kind of play around with it once it's in place. And you can always add smaller individual pieces of hair as well, just poking out from under the edge of the hat. Now for the mouth, I want to fill it with black fondant. So I've tried to roll it fairly thin, and then I've cut this out from my template, and we're going to just nudge that in there. Now if it doesn't quite reach the bottom and top, don't worry, because the teeth will cover it, but it needs to go from side to side. I've got a pink oval for the tongue. Press it down slightly in the middle, and we're going to add a bit of shading now with some black. So we're going to put a strip of white in for the teeth, just to make sure it's nice and thin at either end. And then we're going to push the teeth, or the lines between the teeth, in with the pointy end of the Dresden tool. I'm going to repeat the same for the top. You probably have to stick them in place with a little bit of water, otherwise they might fall to the back of the mouth. And we're going to use some more white fondant to fill the eyes. So just a small ball, and I'm going to squish it in place till it fills the eye socket that I made earlier. I've got a strip of black, which is rolled the thin point on either end, slightly thicker in the middle, and that's going to go around the edge of each eye. I've got some brown fondant that I've rolled really nice and thin for the eyes. We're using a circle cutter to cut out the iris, and then we're going to repeat the same with black fondant and a smaller cutter. Now just to give them a bit more colour, I'm just going to use an edible pen, or you can use food colour and paint it on, that's fine. I'm going to keep it lighter near the bottom of the eyes, and I'm just going to darken it a bit around the edge. So I've got a black edible pen for around the very outside edge. And just a dot of white. I'm going to use fondant for the white rather than the pen for this dot, just because it's a bit bigger than what I would normally use for the pen. And we're going to use a range of food colours now and food paints to add some colour. So these are the Sweet Sticks ones. Again, I'll put links below. I've diluted them with like a clear alcohol or dipping solution. Now this does evaporate. It's also edible, but it does evaporate, so you're not really eating alcohol. And I've used a mix of like the turquoisey blue and the other blue, and even a little bit of black, but it's diluted down, so I'm not using it at its full strength. And we've painted that on the hat and the hair. So now we're going to use the pale blue for the other parts of his skin that's going to be on show. So around that sort of elbow and forearm. Then we're going to roll a strip of black. It's going to be sort of the edge of the t-shirt. Do the same on the other arm. And if your fondant doesn't reach the bottom edge of the board, like mine doesn't, just make sure you've put a bit of dark blue fondant around the side of the cake as well. Let's add the denim jacket. So again, I've gone back to that darker blue, and I'm constantly looking at my template for where it should end. And then we've put a bit of texture on with a texture mat, some stitching details with a stitching tool, and we scruffed up the edges again with the end of that stitching tool, so it looks like the scruffy ends of the jacket. We're going to add a collar. Again, we can add stitching lines to that. Once that's on, we're going to paint it using the same colours we used earlier, but I'm concentrating more on the black, still diluting it down. Anywhere that's going to be in shadow is going to have more black, and anywhere that looks like the light is hitting it, we're going to paint bits of white onto. Again, keep hold of your template so you can see what colours are going to go where the light falls. So we've done that on the other side of his jacket as well. So the next face. So again, I'm using my template to see where the nose is and the eyes go, and I'm going to press in. Can you see I keep cutting areas out my template so I can work out exactly where they're going to go? Let's add the colour just like we did on the previous one. So pink on the ends of the ears, cheeks, a little bit on the nose, and then we've used a darker blue to go under anywhere that's shaded. So adding the eyebrows, again the same as we did before, and then the hair. So we're just adding pieces, a little bit at a time, and then we're pressing with the Dresden tool in to get some more lines and shape in there. We're going to put the whites in the eyes. We're going to add a bit of brown. We're going to add that black circle again into the middle of each bit of brown. a piece of black around the edge. So again, just nice and thin at the end of each piece of black. Now I've already put a piece of black in the mouth, and then we're going to add the teeth. So I missed off a bit of light blue here where the edge of his hand would just be, or sort of just beyond his wrist. So I'm just going to put that on there, and also on this hand. So again, using the template to mark where that hand wants to end. So I've just missed a little bit at the top of the hand, so I'll fill that with hair so that we cover the cake underneath. And then I'm just going to mark in the fingers, pressing them in, so that it makes them look a little bit less flat once we've pressed them in. Let's add a piece of black fondant on here for the cuff. Let's add a bit of texture, so where the seams at the edge would go, I'm just going to press in. Let's add some lines on the one at the top. So we've added a cuff at the top as well, and some little sort of zigzag lines. Now I've added a dab of water everywhere that I want there to be a little metal stud coming out from, and we're going to do them in black. It's kind of like a teardrop, and then it's squashed, so the pointy bit sticks up. So I'm then going to use an edible metallic paint. So these ones are just water activated ones. They're almost like a children's paint palette, but they're edible. You just mix them with water and then we can paint them on. The lighter the metallic colour, the more highlighted it's going to look. And then I'm going to use that white edible pen to draw on his cuff. Again, can you see I'm having to look at my template all the time for guidance. And then we're going to do the hands. So it's almost like a big paddle shape, which we cut a thumb into, and then we divide the rest into 4 fingers. So I'll try and round off the fingers a bit at the ends, just putting a little bit of shape under there and trying to sort of push in some knuckles just gently. I don't want too much definition, and that's just going to go over there like so. So just push it around until you're happy with what it looks like. Again, I'm still looking at my template for guidance of whereabouts these are going to go. And then we're going to add his watch, so a strap of black around the wrist and then a disc of black on top of that. We're going to use a dark red, and we're going to put a strip around the arm for his sleeve. And the same on this one. So this one I've cut into 2 strips, so it looks like the bit where the sleeve kind of folds over and you have the button on your cuff. So add a bit more shading, so plenty of black edible dust on this one. And I want to kind of go thicker in parts so it looks more like the checked pattern. And then I've put a disc of red on for the button. And then we're just going to paint that up in the metallics again. So now the same process again with the hair. So I've got a bit of the different blues mixed together, a little bit of black. It's really watered down with that clear alcohol. This way it kind of runs into the gaps and it'll make it look darker everywhere that it's meant to be shadowed. I can also add a bit of white anywhere that's meant to be highlighted. And then we're going to keep the dry edible powders for dusting around the hands. So again, between the fingers are where it's going to be most shaded. We're just going to add the final details to the jacket. It's got a little pin on there, I think, and some badges on here. Now, you can use an edible printer if you want to print these from a picture and then stick them on. I thought it was easier to paint them. I didn't give them a lot of time to dry though, and I should have done before putting the metallics on. Again, use your template for guidance. And you don't even have to do them in this position. You can find a different picture that you like and have them in a different pose. Or if you just want to do one of them rather than both, then that would be okay. So it took me a little while to do this one, but I did really enjoy doing it. I would recommend watching the film if you haven't. And don't forget to check out the other cakes in this collaboration. You can find the links in the description box below. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to hit the thumbs up button and leave me a comment below. You can see more of my tutorials by clicking on the images on screen now. If you haven't already, make sure you click the subscribe button to stay up to date with my future tutorials. There are also links in the description box below where you can find me on Facebook, Instagram and more.